today we'll be covering reports of remote viewing of extraterrestrials and their bases and outposts on this world and others. And this has definitely been hovering over, well, it's been hovering the UFO phenomenon just like on the edges of the fringe for this one. And there is a timeline, one that involves government agencies and experiments, which produced pretty shocking results. And in this episode of Mysteries with the History, we will go through that timeline and look at the players involved and their results as well. Hello and welcome to this episode of Mysteries with the History, where you'll be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. I'm very excited for this episode because my co-host is back, and that's Jimmy Church of Fade to Black Radio. Jimmy, it's been, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah. I checked out, didn't I? So it feels so good to be back. And hello, everyone. I hope everybody is well. Another great show that you've got lined up for today. And we'll get to that in a second. But I want to ask you, what's with the gangsta OG image that we've got going on here?
You like my hat?
I love the hat. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a screen grab right there. That's a screen grab. Should have done that. But
I just got mine in the mail, and it's actually, this hat right here is for Patreon members. So those that help the show get going, you guys get cool merch like hats and cups and this super sick magnet that says UFO researcher nutrition facts. Look at that. Super cool stuff. And
wow.
This stuff you can't buy. I give it out to all of my
Wait. Help me out. What's Patreon?
Patreon.
I mean, I've heard of it. I've kind of checked it out a little bit, but I really don't understand. For everybody, what's Patreon?
Patreon is the best way to support creators, and it's like a membership. So you get access, in my case, you get access to videos, photos, updates, merch that I'm not selling but giving out, and all of that fun stuff. Oh, and you also have access to live events that are only for Patreon members as well, where we play trivia games and we share experiences, and those trivia games you're able to win merch. So it's like all these really fun things. And for those that have been watching this channel for some time are fully aware that the shows have been almost cut in half in time. There's less of them just because I do work 3 jobs. And if you want to help allow me to create more content here on YouTube or on podcasts, Patreon is the absolute best way to support the channel. And then maybe I can quit some of my jobs and do this more as a full-time gig. I think it'd be like so fun.
Now, okay, so how do we do this? Can you post a link? I want my merch. So let me sign up to Patreon. How do I do that? I'll do it right now in real time.
The link is actually in the description box below, both on YouTube and for the podcasts as well. It's Patreon.com/paradigm_shifts, or you can even type in Cristina Gomez, but there is no H in Cristina. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live, and of course, all of my amazing Patreon supporters. This could not happen without you, and some of you guys are going to get these really cool hats if you haven't already got them in the mail. And change his name from W Decker to Wes Decker. Thank you for that. And Scott, thank you as well. Love the hat and the show, but it's like a double whammy here, right? But
okay, wait. Slow down. Okay. I'm in the description box, and I don't see Patreon here. I don't see a link.
Well, luckily, Hides put it in the live chat.
Okay. Oh, there it is there. Okay, so, and then how do I, okay, so if I click on this in the live chat, I just closed it out.
Now you gotta highlight it. Well, Jimmy, while you do that, and while others do that as well, I'm going to go get the show started talking about remote viewing and UFOs. Because this is something that I think a lot of people consider when they want to start doing remote viewing or when they kind of become almost an expert and they're like, what about the crashes? What about the UFOs, right? I'm going to share my screen here while Jimmy signs up in real time. Jimmy, you're an OG over here.
I am okay. I can't copy and paste out of the chat. Oh, okay. Hold on for a second. I am just going to go to patreon.com/paradigm underscore shifts. Right? That's all I have to do. Let's see. Oh, there you are. Become a member. Oh, this is easy.
It's so easy. Yes.
Okay, what's the maximum I can sign up for?
Well, that's up to you, but there's all these different tiers people to sign up on that they think is reasonable for them. But thank you, Jimmy. So right here on screen, we're looking at, in this case, the OGs of remote viewing, looking at how put off, which many of us should be aware of in present day, mainly to do with the To the Stars Academy run by Tom DeLonge. Hal Puthoff was in that, but he's been interested in remote viewing since the beginning. Then you have Kit Green in the middle looking all snazzy in his tie. Then you have Russell Targ in the back. And then right next to him is Pat Price. There are a few other remote viewers that have definitely made a name for themselves, but here we are able to see some of the original researchers and participants getting fully involved in remote viewing. Many of them did deal with instances or targets that looked at UFO crashes, locations, and even attempting to interact with these entities or find them here on planet Earth. Isn't that kind of wild, Jimmy?
I'm busy signing up. I'm busy signing up to Patreon. I'm going full tilt. Okay. This photograph right here is one of the most impressive, not only groups of people, but it's the start of an endeavor that would change the world. And I think that's a very, very important point. Aside from looking at the size of Russell Targ, who's about 7'6", which and he still is too. By the way, he's a big guy. That the brain power and the ideas behind this, and then SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, which is a company that based up in Palo Alto, that took creative ideas, okay, and then would turn those creative ideas, outside of the box stuff, and then turn it into something that could be marketed to corporations and companies and individuals and entities that are out there. And SRI was one of the very few companies in the country that would do this kind of thing. And one of their endeavors was remote viewing. And they went full on into it. And yes, they got customers. There were quite a few. I'm just going to use the word entities and organizations that were interested in this kind of research, and the ability to go non-local with we're going to discuss this in a little bit, using consciousness and going non-local and being able to observe locations that were not your own, were around anywhere but where you are at, which could mean another country. It could mean another room, a building, and observe and bring that information back to whoever needs the information or is asking for the information. Now, why is that important, Cristina? It's important because you save money, right? Okay, you're not transporting humans in cars or planes or boats or whatever. So there's that. That's a direct benefit. But the other benefit is not being observed doing this. There are no reports of anybody being in a room or outside going, I feel like we're being looked at. right? Or maybe seeing the ghost of somebody in a room and
It's
and
only at the
feeling
grocery store.
yeah, feeling the presence of something. There have been no reports of that. And so and not putting somebody in jeopardy or in harm's way, right?
That's
These are really big benefits to this kind of research, and they went full tilt. They pushed this forward, and by all measures was successful. Not everything was, wasn't 100%. You have and we're going to move on for a second, but I want everybody to understand one important point. When you are jumping into the field, consciousness, the connectivity of everything, you're getting all of the information. You're getting everything. So you've got to weave through that, get through the static and the other stuff that could confuse your target or the information that you're trying to get to. You have to filter that stuff out. And the successful remote viewers were able to do just that. And that's filter out the noise of other stuff that could misrepresent what you're trying to get to. Like, for instance, and I'll give you an example. Let's say, and I'm just speaking in metaphor here, I'm just going to improvise. Let's say your target, and you don't know your target, it's blind, right?
right.
But your handler knows, right? The company, whoever needs this information. And that target is a bridge in Great Britain. Okay. Now, so that's what's important. But maybe you are seeing a bar, a restaurant next to the bridge. Now, is that successful? Well, what you need to do now, you've got to make a decision as a remote viewer. Am I on the right path here? And now let's say that you come back and your information is about a restaurant or a lounge and it's not the bridge. And then later they find out that you described perfectly the restaurant that is at the beginning of the bridge. You were there, but you weren't able to filter it out. Is that a successful remote view? Well, to the individual, it is. But to the person contracting this information, you're not giving them the right information. And that's the ticket to remote viewing. How to get the static out, right? How to remove everything else because you're seeing everything and get to what is important. It's a fascinating job. And the people that were involved with it all said the same thing. I can do it. You can do it. All of humanity on planet Earth has the ability. We're sentient beings. We have consciousness. We can laugh, we can cry, we can think, we can ponder, we can dream. Those are all parts of consciousness. We all have that. Another thing that you can tap into is the ability to remote view. We have the tools, right? We have the toolbox. It's the ability to practice, be patient, and learn how to do it.
And that's where the difficulty is actually. Jimmy and I have done a show on remote viewing, gosh, I want to say 2 years ago now, where it goes into detail on what it is and even how to practice it in books that are recommended. But this show in particular is talking about the ET aspect to remote viewing. Now, Jimmy and I have both attempted remote viewing in our lifetime, and I have not been successful, like not once, but that's not stopping me from attempting to try it again. It is something that Jimmy said everyone has the capability of doing. Russell Targ has mentioned this on multiple occasions, but it's really being patient and quieting the mind in order for us to receive these messages. And there are a few other people that are pretty well known in terms of remote viewing. One of them being Joe McMoneagle. And when he worked for the Stargate project, he conducted probably one of the most famous remote viewing sessions of Mars back in 1984. And so, given the coordinates and a time frame, McMonagle describes seeing ancient structures resembling pyramids and evidence of a past civilization and even tall, thin humanoid figures. But he was looking at several thousand years into the past, which is very unique when it comes to remote viewing, is that you're able to look into the future and into the past along within the present as well. And I'm going to share you an image of what he looks like. There he is. McMonagle is right here. He has written some very fantastic books pertaining to remote viewing. One of them called Mind Trek, and another one I believe it's called Remote Viewing. But him, along with Ingo Swann, who wrote a book in 1998, and the title of his book is amazing. It's called Penetration: The Question of Extraterrestrial and Human Telepathy. And there he goes into significant detail of when he was given very unique coordinates where he did encounter extraterrestrial beings, and even looking on the far side of the moon. There's a lot of controversy when it comes to the moon, but from the coordinates that he got, because again, Jimmy had mentioned that a lot of these remote viewers don't know what they're looking at because that can contaminate the data and the perception of what they're seeing. So they have to go in really completely blind, not knowing anything about the subject. And so when he was given these coordinates, Ingo Swann, he realized that there were very odd structures on the moon, entities on the moon, this kind of green hazy gas on the far side of the moon as well. And it's just something that I think catches a lot of people's attention. And I think, Jimmy, for yourself, when you heard this information from Ingo Swann when he released it back in 1998, did you think, oh, I already knew this, or this is kind of crazy information?
I
You're on
muted
mute.
myself. I was gonna sneeze. You probably saw me doing this, but I
I
got rid
did.
of it. Um, the that question, the ability to how far does local, non-local go? Right? Is it confined? Do we have boundaries? Is it just on Earth, or can we go off planet or out of the solar system, out of the star system to another galaxy, to something completely remote? Well, when we're talking about consciousness or the ideas of entanglement, which have been talked about a lot, and that to me answers a lot of questions with this. The idea of being able to remote view Mars, I think is solid. I think it's good. I don't think that there are any boundaries or constraints to it, and the mysteries of Mars, past, present, or possibly even the future of Mars are huge. We want to know, are we Martians? Was there something that was there? And how do we do it? We haven't had boots on the ground there. Well, that's the perfect application, isn't it? That's the perfect application of remote viewing. That's exactly what you would want to do. Now, the information that was presented on Mars from McMonagle, again, released by Ingo Swann, there he is right there. I think without having humans there, I think that uh, they have been more or less confirmed. Right now, I'm not saying everything is 100% here, and we just don't know that. But there were other remote viewing projects that were on Mars. One of them I did live on Fade to Black about 7 or 8 years ago, where we had two. This was with Courtney Brown, and we had 2 or 3 remote viewers at the same time, one in the United Kingdom, one in Hawaii, and I think there was a third. And so they remote view, they didn't know what the targets were. But here's the fascinating thing, Cristina, with this entire project. And I watched this live. You can go back and watch Fade to Black and find that episode, and you can watch it yourself. But I watched it live. And as I'm watching these two remote viewers zone in on the target, you know what they did, Christina? I want that mug. I want that mug. What does that say?
It says questions in progress, and then it says question everything.
That's what I'm talking about. She's got the merch. It is. Do you have a Mysteries with the Histories Patreon lunchbox?
No, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea, isn't it? I like it. I want my lunchbox. They were remote viewing. The target was pyramids on Mars. And both of them, now, again, live in the UK, live in Hawaii, they had a big, in their drawing and pulling the draw, and the construction of these pyramids on Mars. Yeah. With both of them, with the civilization, the builders of the pyramids on Mars were underground and coming above ground and building the pyramids. Now, how is it that this can happen? Now, I'm going to go back to the local question about this, which is the basis of remote viewing. It has to be, and this is my opinion, it has to be part of the answers is entanglement. And there is a big debate about entanglement used for communication or anything across the vastness of space or even close, because you're only dealing with one bit of information at a time, that there's not enough there to construct a big transmission of information or communication. But what if you're entangling everything? Okay. You're entangling all of your brain or 90% of it, and entangling that's a lot of information. And then you are able to get a picture of what's going on. And I think that is what is happening around the world, here on Earth, where the entanglement isn't one particle, but it's a mass of particles. That's your brain. And there's a lot of stuff going on in your brain. And so if you're entangling, you've got 1 trillion nodes in your head. And if you're entangling that with 1 trillion of something else on the other end, you are able to achieve a 3D picture. And that gets encoded and decoded. It comes back to you, your brain decodes it, and you see it, just like you do with your eyeballs. That's the locality, non-locality part of this. And I'll give one more example and then we'll move on. Your eyes, everybody here that is in the chat room, everybody here that is listening to this, what are they doing? They're looking at their phone, or they're looking at a computer screen. They're looking at a monitor. But at the same time, your eyes are seeing everything else in the room around you. It's seeing the floor. It's seeing the carpeting. It's seeing that your brain is processing the trillions of bits of information that are happening per second with your eyes, and your brain is decoding this. That's what it's happening right now. Everybody is going through that. You don't realize how complicated and how quick the brain has to be to do this. That's why you go back to local, non-local, and the entanglement aspect of this. And somebody is able to get to another location, see what is going on, just like your eyes, and then process that information back through your brain. And then you decode it. It's encoded and decoded. And they draw it, they're processing it, and they come up with an answer based on the vision of the local, non-local position that you find yourself in with remote viewing. And that's the fascinating part. And that's what McMonagle did with Mars. And you could do that same process, technically speaking, anywhere in the universe, because entanglement is at the speed of now. It's not at the speed of light. And that's the crazy part. That I'm so convinced that not only is remote viewing part of us and something that we can do, but it's the same process that is involved in anything else. Channeling, dreams, deja vu, precognition, the ability to think and process stuff and think about things in the dream state, or think about things that are going on at your parents' house that are happening at that moment. You are able to visualize that and maybe see your mom cooking dinner. She says, "I'm cooking dinner," and you see your mom in the kitchen, right? You're processing that. It's the same thing. And that's what remote viewing is. I don't think it's fantasy, and I think science today supports all of this.
Cindy's saying, I wonder if dreams have remote viewing to them. I think that's
100%.
an
100%.
interesting thought.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Pay attention to that. Almost said a bad word. Pay attention to that blank. Because yes. Cristina, don't you often ponder? I'm going to throw this over to you. Don't you often ponder that the dream state is just as real as when you're awake? What's the difference? What's the difference? It's just another reality, isn't it?
It can be, but what many of us come to realize is that our day affects our night. And sometimes we have dreams or nightmares because of the fears that we have or incidents that we have in the daytime. Now, for myself, I try to make every moment count of my day. So I always attempt, to the best of my ability, to at the very least lucid dream when I'm sleeping. Does it work? Almost never. But it's the thought that counts, because I think then that's where your logic definitely applies, where you're able to almost manipulate that sort of reality in the same way that we're able to make decisions and change things around us in this reality. Then you could even bring in astral projection as well into that, which I have yet to succeed, but I'm working at it. And when we look at these different things, could astral projection be a form of remote viewing? Could, in lucid dreaming, could you say, all right, take me here, even in the dream state? Is that a form of remote viewing? The beautiful thing is that there's so much that humanity hasn't tapped into yet that allows us to once again feel this wonderment and curiosity that we did when we were children, when we believed that magic existed. What if it still does, but it takes the form of energy, to where we're able to explain that away with quantum entanglement and quantum mechanics, more so than just saying, oh, it's just magic and fairy and unicorns? What if there's something a little bit more to it? And so the dream state, I think, has a lot to it. There's a lot of value behind it. It's just knowing how to properly tap into it and to use it to your own advantage.
The key here, apparently I'm the dude. I'm the dude that interrupts you. It is this. Now, last night I had Paul Smith on the show, one of the OG figures and characters of remote viewing, who worked with McMonagle at Fort Meade, and was trained by Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff and the formation of Project Stargate. And of course, we can mention The Men Who Stare at Goats, right? The movie, which is based on all of this. And so the conversation that we had last night is one that you and I have had many, many, many times on this program, which is this: the answer to all of this is consciousness, but we don't know what that is. Plenty of philosophers, right? How many Dalai Lamas, how many Gandhis can we get in on this conversation? And that includes scientists and so forth, to somehow get a grip on consciousness. It's tough. It's tough. We all agree on one thing, right? That we have it, right? But where does it come from? What's the basis of it? Is it physical? Is it non-physical? The chicken or the egg, right? Does consciousness enter us as we are born, as we are conceived, or is it part of the physicality of everything and exist in particles, and then enough particles are massed together and then consciousness evolves out of that? Is it biological? Is it chemistry, or is it something else altogether that we just don't understand? And this debate will go on forever. But when it comes to remote viewing, the key to remote viewing, which is the same key to so many other things, is consciousness, right? And when I asked Paul last night, I said, "Okay, man, how does it work?" And he said, "Well, it's consciousness, but I can't say any more than that because I don't understand anything about consciousness any more than anybody else does." And it's one of the biggest debates, isn't it? Now, I can throw this back to you, Christina. You chose to put on that hat before the show, right? You made a decision and you put the hat on and you put the earphones on over the hat. And this is something that you have the ability to do. Not anything else on this planet can do that, but humans can. You know that you have consciousness, but what is it? So I'm going to ask you, what do you think consciousness is?
It seems to be a form of self-awareness. But there's more to that because when we have access, like when we're conscious and we have access to consciousness more so than any other animal, is that it is that form of self-awareness where we're able to make decisions to benefit us or others more so than merely for survival. I think that definitely plays something to it. Now, bringing consciousness into the whole tapping into the universe part, that's where it gets really interesting or concerning, depending on who you are. But something that has been practiced and taught for thousands of years, it's getting into this meditative state and tapping into the universe, the cosmos, your inner self, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, in order to receive certain answers, to get information that you're not able to get in the physical form, maybe. But I think at the simplest, most concentrated definition or answer of consciousness, it's merely self-awareness. At least that's my answer.
Okay.
But Jimmy, do you have a
So
different answer to that one?
that's as good as anything, right? Do animals, anything, worms, chimpanzees, right? Fish, do they think about death? Now, they may easily think about survival. That's an instinct, right? Okay, but that's not contemplating death. And so that's the part of you say self-awareness, right? And I would say it's the ability to, yes, there's that, but there's the ability to discuss crazy things that we can't see. Atoms. How can we how can we how can we do that? How can we discuss the outer reaches of the known universe? Do animals think about that stuff? I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. Maybe a dog is listening to me right now in somebody's living room that's watching the show, going, "I understand relativity, right? I got this, man. I talk about molecules all the time with my buddies. I don't know, but it certainly consciousness being what it is and the key to our next stage of evolution. ET understands, and ET would then remote view us. Just like McMonagall was remote viewing Mars, why wouldn't ET take advantage of that? Right? Remote view this planet and us and who we are and understand us so we could get on the list of places to visit. So by the time ET arrives here, have they remote viewed us? And I mean all of us, the past, the present, where we are going in the future and getting into that precog side of things, to see if we're cool, if we are worthy, and certainly to understand us, our fears, our likes, our dislikes, and all of that. And I would say that the answer would be yes, of course, because consciousness is what drives remote viewing. And we are understanding that more and more now in the present. Well, ET in an advanced civilization would be doing the very, very same thing. And yes, remote viewing Earth.
There
Yes.
have been instances where some remote viewers, such as Joe McMoneagle or even Ingo Swann, have come across situations where they've attempted to remote view an entity or a alien base and gets blocked off. This is
Yes.
something that is, thinking about it, is kind of wild. First of all, how are these entities able to know that they're being scanned and or watched? And then on top of that, how are they able to place blockages so that the person, the entity, the person, or the location can no longer be scanned? In order for something like that to happen, only displays that they are very knowledgeable in the topic of remote viewing and know how to do it, but also how to protect themselves from entities that attempt to scan them. And this is written down, it's in several books, but there was one book in particular that I found rather shocking, of information that I haven't come across in other remote viewing books. And it's called The Seventh Sense by Lynn Batchanin. And in his remote viewing sessions, he's attempted to actually enter other people or entities more so than just looking at a location. So let's say, Jimmy, you get into a car accident, God forbid, right? But let's say you get into a car accident. According to Lynn, he is able to enter inside of your mind and experience it as if he is experiencing what you're experiencing. And in these instances that he's attempted to remote view people and situations, there have been reports by those around him that his eye color would change depending on the person that he is
That's
remote
right.
viewing. So his eyes are brown, but they could change into blue, or no, his eyes are blue, but they could change into green or brown. And also he has physiological effects. So let's say in that accident, Jimmy, you break your rib, right? He is able to feel that. And then when he comes out of that remote viewing session, there is still that level of pain, right? Where you might have had that pain. And even voice changes as well. And for those listening, you can take it or leave it if you believe it or not. But it's just something that I haven't really come across in any other book written, like in written format, where someone is able to share these experiences so literally, so firsthand, to where they're like the absolute definition of an empath, not just an emotional empath, right? But really feeling everything that the other person went through or sensed. So, what if these entities that people such as Ingo Swann or McMonagall have attempted to remote view, and they have also gone through certain situations or maybe even catastrophes to where these human remote viewers are able to feel and sense firsthand. And with that being said, Jimmy, I want to ask you this. Do you think that would scare someone to remote view knowing that they're able to feel that pain? Or do you think it would invigorate them to pursue remote viewing, knowing that they're able to sense something firsthand?
Right. Now, is that an invasion of privacy?
That's a good question.
That's a moral, deep moral philosophical issue that needs to be put on the table. Now, because if you flip it over, if you have that ability, right? What a cool tool to have at your disposal. So what's Putin doing right now? Right? And you're able to get into Putin's eyes and see what he, right? Or your neighbor, right? Is that an invasion of privacy? Right? You're upset with your neighbor because your neighbor is making noise in the backyard or playing their stereo too loud, and you're able to, is that an invasion of privacy? That's a really, really big issue, and that's an important tool that you could have at your disposal at this moment. Where is so and so, and what are they doing? I think it's key to this. Now, if we back up and we go to that book that you were talking about that Ingo Swann published in 1998, there was another intriguing chapter in that book, and he talks about Pat Price. And we can discuss Pat Price more in depth in a minute. But that Pat Price remote viewed and found ET, he's from here. He's from Burbank, California, Pat Price. Now you have Ingo Swann, you have McMonagle, and of course, Russell Targ and Puthoff, and that whole core group. That includes Paul Smith, who I had on the show last night, that these are genuine gifts. And Pat Price was probably, now it depends on who you talk to, but certainly the public side of Pat Price and the persona that was out there, he was kind of a rock star, right? And he kind of would talk about his abilities and his gifts. But you know what he did? He remote viewed ET and found four alien bases on planet Earth.
That's right.
And that was revealed in Ingo Swann's book. And nobody knew about this. Now, we can talk about finding Russian missiles, and finding hostages in Africa, or military plans, or satellites that we can do. Okay, yeah, I get why you would remote view that. That's an advantage, and it's hard to get a spy into China, and it's hard to get a spy into, and it's hard to get a spy to, and yes, the CIA and the NSA and other organizations, including the Pentagon and the United States Army, wanted these tools at their disposal. And I get the reasons why. And they should, and they did. But Pat Price found 4 ET bases on planet Earth. And so once they did that, it was flipped over to the team, and each team member, again, this is blind, right? These are blind targets. But they were all assigned one of these 4 bases that Pat Price had found on planet Earth. One was on a mountain in Alaska. One was in the Himalayas, I want to say, or Mongolia, like right in that part of Asia, and 2 other bases. Well, anyway, all of that information, just like you were just saying, was very, very jumbled and staticky to the remote viewers. They were never able to, all 4 targets. It was very bizarre. They weren't able to, now they had the mountain, right? They had the location, they had the city, but they weren't able to get into that information. And is that because ET is able to scramble it, that they understand consciousness, and they understand when somebody's remote viewing a certain area? And they how do I say it? If you need to remote view Earth from the other side of the universe, how do you find Earth? How do you find it? You've got to target it, right? How do you find it? There's a lot of planets. There's a lot of stars. Well, it's the same thing on planet Earth too, as well. But if you are able to do that, then you have a 3D 3-point geolocating system, something that allows you to zone in on these targets and these coordinates. And once you do, you're setting up a red flag. So was ET able to go, wait a minute here? No, no, we're scrambling that information. And isn't that interesting that Pat did this of all things for alien bases on planet Earth, and then when the remote viewers turned around and tried to target those locations to get more information, it was all completely scrambled.
That's really shocking. And those locations are in Australia, Alaska, Zimbabwe, and Pyrenees, which is between the border of Spain and France. Those are the bases to where Pat Price had found what was able to remote view alien bases in those 4 locations. And what really took me aback is that he actually published that in his book. I find that odd. I really do, because I would assume here, because he did used to work for the government, right, the CIA, that
CIA, yeah.
he would have to sign an NDA, right, so that he wasn't able to share that information. So maybe the NDA expired, or he was allowed to do it, or who knows what. But I feel like that information, if true, is very precious information, unless, hear me out, Jimmy, unless anyone can have that information. Doesn't matter, because no human is able to access those bases, maybe because they're too deep within the earth, in these mountains, because it's too heavily guarded by entities, or maybe it's just slightly outside of this dimension to where you're not able to physically access it, right? There's all these possibilities. And I have those same kind of questions with Skinwalker Ranch as well. Like, why did Robert Bigelow sell the property if he knew something was there? Well, it could be one of those several possibilities that I also applied to these several mountains that Pat Price was able to remote view. And if you were given the opportunity, Jimmy, would you want to go to any of those locations, attempt to look for these alien bases?
I do it all the time. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take one for the team. I've got bail
Heck
money.
yeah.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you
yeah.
go.
I definitely would. Um, I'm not here to say anything specific because that's just not who I am. But I have, I have visited some pretty secure areas, especially of late in the last 4 years, where I've gone up and virtually knocked on the door. I don't have a problem with doing that. I don't. And the idea behind this to pinpoint a location where ET may be putting a subconscious Faraday cage over these locations, right? And you've seen it how many times, right? You've seen this portrayed in the movies where you've got some psychic medium going, okay, I'm close. Something is blocking it though. Right. Well, yeah. And it seems so fundamental to me. We don't understand how consciousness works, and we're barely understanding things like local and non-local, and entanglement, and spooky action at a distance, and what this could involve. But one thing is for sure, I mean, like 100%, I'm going to get back to Pat Price in a second. ET has to, and us, if we are out interstellar and traveling the universe, you have to have the ability to communicate. You cannot be out there 10,000 light years from your home planet or galaxy, or a million light years away from your home planet or galaxy, and not be in communication. That doesn't make any sense. What? You're just literally out there on your own? No. you can communicate. And that communication has to be done in some form of non-local, entangled, real-time communication like you and I are communicating right here, right? We're communicating at the speed of light. And here, because of our distance, it seems like it's in real time. But the further you get out there in space, 10,000 light years, that's 10,000 years it would take to send a message, and then 10,000 years to receive an answer. That's friggin' useless, right?
It is.
So ET has to have a workaround with that. Has to, whether it's entanglement or maybe it's communication with a wormhole. Maybe you are able to ask the question and get the answer before you send the question out, right? Like that. I mean, and which is, by the way, workable in the math. I know it sounds nuts, but anyway, that's another point for another time. Back to Pat Price. Remote viewing and remote viewing with ET. Pat Price depends on what version of pop culture you're going to access the information on. But it appears that Pat Price was taken out. Okay? Taken out. And was it because he talked too much? Was it because he knew too much? I think that a big chunk of the rumor mill there is that the CIA took him out. Okay, that's like a general understanding about Pat Price and the ending of his life. But Paul Smith said something really interesting last night on the show. He said, "Why would the CIA take out their best asset? Russia would have a reason to take out Pat Price." Yeah.
Unless he was no longer valuable.
Well, okay. I'm too much of a lover of this country to think that something like that could happen. I don't want to go there. But the other part of Pat Price, and these are the facts. When Project Stargate ended, right, with the U.S. Army, and it was defunded and closed down, who did the CIA keep? That guy right there.
Oh,
Pat Price.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are the facts. That's the facts of the case. So I'm not so sure the CIA would want to, because it's such a public thing and it happened in the United States. Why would you want to do that? And he's employed by the CIA. These are things that were known. So why would you trip up and make that kind of mistake? I don't believe that to be the case. But that's the facts are behind Pat Price are exactly as I have presented. When Stargate got shut down, the CIA wanted to keep Pat Price on the payroll and keep his project moving forward. He was too valuable of an asset. And then he dies. And Paul Smith said last night on the show, he had talked to Pat Price's daughter, and that this situation was brought up 1 week before his death. Now, isn't that interesting too, as well? I mean, Pat Price was the real deal, but he bragged a bit too much and he was too visible. And I think the Russians knew exactly who he was, and other bad actors around the world knew who he was and where he was. And there were plenty of people that may have been a little bit angry at Pat, maybe even ET too as well, right? Revealing the location of their bases. But that's the part of remote viewing for me, Cristina, that this is something that's real. It's tangible and intangible at the same time. We have the facts that are there. We have the truth that lies somewhere behind it. But Pat Price and McMonagle and Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée and of course Paul Smith and others that were involved in the program are part of the facts with this. Wasn't 100% successful all the time, but remote viewing itself as a practice and as something that is a tool is real, and that is also a fact.
We have a few minutes left, and there's one more person I'd like to bring up today, and that is Courtney Brown.
Yeah.
He had a really interesting experience during one of his remote viewing sessions focused on the gray alien collective mind. And this was providing a very unique perspective on the extraterrestrial psychology. So in one notable session, Brown claimed that he had penetrated the command center of the gray collective consciousness, and he described a vast interconnected mental network with the central heartbeat of information flow. And Brown reported encountering this hierarchical structure topped by the Council of 10 and a supreme leader with a dark twisted personality supposedly. And so Brown had stated that he was ejected from the target when his leader detected his psychic presence.
Yep.
Something that we've mentioned slightly with Ingo Swan and McMonagle, where they were being blocked whenever they attempted to remote view certain locations or entities. In this case, for Courtney Brown, he was ejected from his target back into his room or office or wherever he was remote viewing from, unable to re-enter that same target. This is another famous case. It's written in several books, but you had the pleasure, Jimmy, of speaking to Courtney Brown firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
Did he tell you this story?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We talked about it a few times. I know Courtney well. We're friends. Very talented guy, an amazing teacher, which is something that I always respect with anybody that has the ability to teach and wants to teach what they know. Courtney's also a professor of mathematics, and he's a very, very, very smart, very well-spoken person, but he's got a very powerful mind, and he is able to tap into that. And his remote viewing abilities, and his son is crazy good with this. That Courtney had told me on a number of occasions that his presence was detected. Now, this comes from Courtney. I had said earlier in the show that it has never been, 100% proven that a remote viewer has been caught on location, right? There's that part, but Courtney has said that his presence was detected and he was called out a few times, and one of them was with ET, and that they clearly saw him present. Now, my understanding of this, and I agreed to this, is that here on Earth, the human Homo sapien sapien version of remote viewing is something that we are just now starting to understand and starting to learn and starting to teach. ET is at a whole nother level of this, of understanding consciousness. And can you imagine for a second if you have this ability, telepathy and precog and all of these abilities of the mind, including remote viewing, that you would see, I would think that you would see people differently. Maybe they have a light beam coming off the top of their head, right? A sign, and you are able to see different frequencies and different things, quite obviously. Well, so you would also detect maybe the presence of somebody around you. And I think that's what happened with Courtney Brown. And that ET in that situation has a much more advanced capability when it comes to understanding consciousness or remote viewing. And Courtney, being in this room, stood out like a sore thumb, and he got caught. Yeah. And it makes perfect sense to me. Courtney has anybody can go back and listen to any of the many interviews and shows that I've done with Courtney. And they're all fascinating and very interesting. He's a pretty cool cat. That's not what he looks like now.
No, he's older now.
Yeah, he's got hair here. I've never known Courtney with hair, but anyway, you can go back and check out the many interviews that I've done with Courtney Brown and his team over the years.
Rock on. And No Filter, thank you so much for the $2 and for supporting the channel as well. I really appreciate that. And that's actually all the time that we have for today. Jimmy, who do you have on to Fade to Black?
Tonight, Melanie Aguirre is with us. I'm wearing her t-shirt. I'm wearing her merch, Quantum Disclosure Project. We're going to be talking about that and the ability to go into a trance and communicate with the past, present, and future. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Ooh, I think very appropriate after today's conversation.
Oh, Cristina locked up. I just locked up.
You locked up. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both locking up. Isn't that interesting?
No, you're all frozen. But Jimmy, thank you so much for being on the show. Good luck today on
I'll see everybody tonight.
All right. Thank you. Another great show. Talking about remote viewing, it really is captivating. It really is enticing just to consider, talk about, or maybe even practice as well. Have you ever tried remote viewing? Would you give it a try? And if you already know how to do it, would you ever consider to remote view an alien base if given the opportunity? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comments as well. And make sure to hit that like button before you head out. And if you want to get some super cool merch like this, become a Patreon. That is the best way to support this channel. And maybe I'll go back to doing 3 shows a week, making them longer, quit one of my 3 jobs, because Patreon is the best place to get cool stuff, access to bonus content, and to help the channel continue to make these kinds of shows. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow for strangest news of the week. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.